Well, hello, folks. You're listening to episode 17 of your favorite sports betting podcast, A Mug's Game. And here is your host, Smeg. That's right, everybody. We're back. It's been a while. I think the last time we had a podcast, episode 16, was a mid-season football podcast with the man himself, the genius that is Ronnie. He had some very successful tips in the football, both mid-season and pre-season, way back in August. As I had a few myself, actually. We'll review those bets in the next podcast. Hopefully, Ronnie will be back for a pre-Premier League season, 2021 season podcast, but we're focusing on the tennis for now, the US Open tennis, the second Grand Slam. It's usually the fourth Grand Slam of the year, but the second Grand Slam of the year, obviously because of the COVID lockdown, and so it's going to be tricky. It's going to be pretty tricky, guys. We don't have an awful lot of form necessary to go by. I've been watching a bit of Cincinnati and a few challenger events here and there, but I've put in the work. I've put in a lot of study, and I'm a pretty tired man. So if I'm doing a lot of rambling and veering off the tangents, please be patient, because I've put in hours of study on this, and I can't even guarantee I have it'll be my best work. But we'll see. We'll see. We've tried to be careful, and we've tried to be shrewd, and hopefully we'll be able to pick some winners out of this. Okay, so the aim of this podcast basically is to talk about tennis, the tennis from both a sports betting point of view, but also I will be taking some non-betting related tennis questions, because I'm as much as I am a sports bettor, not really a sports bettor, but a tennis bettor. I'm also a big tennis fan, so I wanted this podcast to appeal both to the betting, the fans of the betting side of it, and also just the tennis lunatics themselves, the big tennis fans too. And so we have some interesting questions that I'll be from tennis fans that I'll be and followers that I'll be addressing towards the end of the podcast. But for now, we're just focusing mostly on the betting side. So we'll go through the men's draw first of all, quarter for quarter. Now, I've been guilty in the past of spending too much time on the quarter betting. I'm going to kind of do the quarter betting and the outright betting at the same time, basically. So we go through the first quarter. Now, the first quarter obviously is the main man himself, Novak Djokovic. He can be found at 10 to 11 around the evens mark to win the US Open, and he's just after beating Roberto Bautista Agut, who is a player who seems to always put it up to Novak a lot more than maybe even some of the higher ranked players. Obviously Bautista Agut is pretty highly ranked himself, but he of course finished typically cool as a cucumber and winning a final set tiebreak against Bautista Agut 7-0. He's just a mental beast, isn't he? He's a mental giant. Some people love him or loathe him, and it seems to me after 2020, after that disastrous tournament that he organised, and then the nightclub dancing with the shirt off and all that kind of thing, he's not exactly the most popular tennis player or popular man in the world right now, apart from with his own admittedly what's the word I'm looking for? I'm trying to be as delicate as possible. I was going to say psychotic fans, but no, that's not fair. His very loyal fans. That's a fair enough way to put it. But so look, he's not the most popular man, but you just can't deny that he's a mental beast. He looks very, very focused. He's getting. I didn't think he'd take the Cincinnati tournament that seriously. He fought back from a set behind, set down against Bautista Agut today. And look, he's looking good. But I'm not going to be recommending backing him at 10 to 11 with 7 Grand Slam matches to play. I just can't do it. Now, having said that, I don't blame anybody for doing it. I think there's been times in the past when Novak has been more dominant when he has been available at a 10 to 11 and pre-slams, even with Nadal and Federer in the field. And in fairness, the fact that they're not in the field and it's still 10 to 11, you can get them at that price. like that is it's fair enough. Like I if anybody does say, do you know what, my one bet of this tournament is going to be Djokovic at 10-11. I mean, obviously he's going to give you a run for your money. Like he's the man to beat, and nobody is going to be surprised if he wins it. But I just think, I just have a suspicion. Look, like at the end of the day, if you're needing final set tiebreaks to get out of to win matches, eventually one of those is not going to go your way. Now, we saw that he had to come back from 2 sets to 1 down. He's unbeaten this year, right? But like we've just kind of seen that he hasn't been his old dominant self. Like we've seen, for example, at Wimbledon. Really, just it was the mental strength, and not like he was outplayed tennis wise by Roger for most of that match, and it was just his pure heart and commitment and mental strength that got him through that. And then again at the Australian Open, team had him on the ropes. He took, he did his customary medical time out when he wasn't feeling so well or whatever, and came back, but it just wasn't. It feels like he's not as dominant as he was. Having said that, look, if you're going back to 10-11, fine. But let's have a look at his draw here. Now he's got an easy first round draw, potentially Kyle Edmund in the second, which on paper sounds like it's a tough draw, but Edmund is mentally quite fragile, really. Struff, who he took care of very easily just even this week, and possibly in the third round. Isner is the hardest potential fourth round, and he's always been able to take care of Isner. And then we got potentially Shapovalov and David Goffin in the quarterfinals. At worst case scenario, once again you'd have to expect Novak to be able to take care of these guys. He's been, he always has been able to take care of these guys. He still seems in great shape. Maybe Tsitsipas or Zverev in the final. And like in fairness, he once again be a strong favourite there too, and probably Medvedev or Team are the ones you're looking at as the worst possible opponents, particularly Team, because if Team is getting to the final, then Novak does have some trouble on his hands. So look, you'd have to say it's a very manageable draw for Novak. Like he's got good records against all these players. Now Tsitsipas, he's 3-2 against Tsitsipas, and also Zverev is in his half the draw, who could also potentially play. We'll talk about that later on. And he's 3-2, so they have a few wins under their belt against him, but not in Grand Slams. And I know he respects Medvedev's game a lot, and he respects Team's game a lot, and they're the worst case scenario opponents, but he'd still be strong favourite in against either of those two. So unlike Australia, when he actually did win, I would actually be a little bit more keen on the 10-11 that's available on Novak now, but it's just not my style to be tipping up a 10-11 shot. I'm more of I like the value long prices. I find that you can find more value in some of the outsider bets. I think a favourite by its very nature is usually not great value, so it's because it's obviously very well known, everybody knows what he can do, he's highly backed, which distorts the price even further away from where the value price would be. So all that kind of things has to be taken into account. So I will say he's 1-4 to win this quarter, and I cannot see anybody else win it. You could think of possibly Shapovalov is maybe the biggest threat, but okay, I wouldn't be backing anybody else to win the quarter. If you're going to back these guys, all I'll say to you is Shapovalov is available at 170 to 1. Now for me, we'll talk about him later in the quality. 170 to 1 on the Betfair Exchange. Isner at 200 to 1 on Betfair Exchange. Goffin at 250 to 1 on the Betfair Exchange. These are massive prices. So like if you wanted to put a few little small nibbles on those prices, I think there's a bit of value in all those prices. Especially, for example, if you put big money on Djokovic, like at those prices, you don't even have to invest much to have nice little covers where you can make decent profit either way. Because once We'll talk about some of the other prices later on. So there's no real bet in the value. There's no value bet there. Quarter 2 is obviously the Tsitsipas and Zverev quarter. Tsitsipas, his first 2 rounds are very easy, and then look, he's got a very easy draw. Basically, the toughest person I like looking at there is Coric, Garin. Coric is the 3rd round, and Coric hasn't exactly Borna Coric hasn't exactly set the world alight in recent years. He's come back from injury, and in recent times we really haven't seen much of him. And then the worst possible opponent in the 4th round is Christian Garin, who wouldn't be renowned for his fast hardcore prowess. And then you're thinking maybe Zverev, or the person who maybe bet Zverev last year, Diego Schwartzman. Worst case scenario, Zverev was all over the shop a little bit against Murray with his serve, sort of threw that match away. Obviously, you could tell that his tennis hasn't completely left him. Tsitsipas is 11-10 and Zverev is 4-1. Now, initially when I saw the draw, I was like, oh, Tsitsipas is... What a dream draw for him. Like, he's 2 very easy matches, and his 4th round match is, you couldn't pick a better 4th round opponent. You know, if Garin is the toughest one you got, then that's brilliant for you. And then obviously we don't know what Zverev is going to show up, but Zverev is off the back of a semi-finals place in his last Grand Slam in the Australian Open. And the fact that Raonic bet Tsitsipas today, it kind of put me off. I was going to back the evens, and it kind of put me off. And I'm nearly even thinking that the 4-1 on Zverev now is better value, because even though I do fancy Tsitsipas if it came to a quarterfinal if it did come to a quarterfinal with Tsitsipas and Zverev, I'd fancy Tsitsipas to win it. If I'm pronouncing that well, I'm just going to go Tsitsipas. We'll call him that. And but, you know, if you'd backed the 4-1 on Zverev pre that, you'd be delighted to have Zverev as 4-1 against Tsitsipas in the quarterfinal. So really, and Zverev does have Kevin Anderson in his first round though, and you know that's a potential banana skin. But although I think Anderson was cramping against Kyle Edmund in a 3-set match, and then so I wonder will he have the fitness to go 5 sets with Zverev, considering he's had all these injuries. But look. Once again, regarding any of these players, I don't think there's great value to be had on Tsitsipas outright. He still has a lot to prove. He's on Djokovic's side of the draw, so you know he's available at between 16, and you might be able to get him at 20s on the exchange. But generally, you can find him at around 16-1. Don't love it myself. Zverev, on the other hand, is available at prices like 50-1 on the exchange, and there's maybe a little bit more value in that, especially considering Zverev has had a little bit, they both had a bit of success against Djokovic, but Zverev has had success in bigger games. Like Zverev has beaten him in a Rome Masters final in clay, and he's beaten him at the end of year, championships. So like they're finals, so they're big games. So for me, I think Tsitsipas is a more dangerous opponent to Djokovic, but Zverev definitely represents a value both for this quarter. Well, I'm not even sure I'd even back him. I wouldn't trust him at 4-1 for this quarter, but at 57-1 on the exchange for the outright tournament, I think that's what I saw, 57. That's definitely tempting. Okay, so quarter 3, Medvedev. This is the Medvedev quarter, and we'll have a look at his potential route. Now, he's got a potentially very easy route. Like his first 3 matches, Delbonis, O'Connell, Wolf, and Peya, maybe Guido Peya. So very easy for 3 first-round matches. And then Dimitrov or Millman, possibly. And then probably Berrettini or Rublev. And you know something, if you know, I turned down the Tsitsipas, the evens on Tsitsipas, but this is a good draw for Medvedev. He should be able to walk through those first 3 rounds. Dimitrov is a danger man, but he did take care of him. The head-to-head is 2-1, but he took care of him straight sets in the US Open last year. And we never know what Dimitrov is going to turn up. He could easily lose in the first round. So it's just one of those ones. And there's no one really else that is that dangerous and that that could potentially meet him in the fourth round. And then Berrettini or Rublev. I think Rublev is a bit overrated. And Berrettini could be tricky, but you'd have to give Medvedev the edge, which is why I think his draw is actually that bit better than Tsitsipas really. Now Tsitsipas does have... Coric is a potential banana skin in the third round for Tsitsipas. And it's just the kind of the fact that if Zverev is playing Tsitsipas in a quarterfinal, that's pretty close. But I'd have Medvedev as a fairly strong favourite against any of these guys. Even if I would have Tsitsipas, and so for that reason, with him being evens, I think he represents more value. So I'm going to suggest 2 points on Medvedev to win quarter 3. I'm still not 100% convinced him as a potential Grand Slam champion. Well, he's going to be a Grand Slam contender, but I don't see him as someone who's going to dominate the game, for example. He still has weaknesses in his game. You still have to wonder about his forehand. The forehand is still a bit funky, but I just think that he is the best player. Now, with all that being said, I also think that Dimitrov is about 300 to 1 on the exchange, and for last year's US Open semi-finalist, he's been to the semi-final of 3 different Grand Slams, and he was at the semi-final last year. And he's not on Novak's side of the draw. I know you can't do each way on the Betfair exchange, but 300 to 1, if he finds his game, is just too much value for a guy with his quality. I don't overly rate him either, but he's still a guy that's capable of turning it on, and you can't really considering what half of the draw he's on, you can't really turn down the 300 to 1. I didn't anyway, so I just wanted to bring that attention to you guys too. And also, if you're going to put on the Medvedev bet, the fact that you would have Dimitrov at 300 to 1 would be a nice little kind of saver for you, because he's obviously the main threat coming from the fourth round. So Berrettini is also something like maybe you might be able to get him at 75 to 1 on the exchange. It's worth considering as well, but having said that, I just prefer the 300 on Dimitrov. Now, quarter 4. Now, if you've been paying attention to our Twitter handle, which is it's called Mug Podcast. Dominic Thiem 7 to 4. Dominic Thiem, we actually backed him at 40 to 1 and then tipped him again at 33 to 1 way back. This is just I think it was around the time during the end of year Final 8 event, basically the ATP World Tour Finals, and he was still available for this tournament at 33 to 1. So at 40 to 1 with Paddy Power, and then was cut to 33 to 1 and when he got to the final. So we have him tipped up for that. So we have a nice little wager on him there, but he took a very bad beating against Krajinovic, like 6-1 and 6-2. The courts are playing faster. They're saying around 30% faster than before, which actually doesn't really suit Thiem. I think if the conditions were a bit like last year and then he's coming in totally fit, this would be ideal for him. He's got a tough draw as well. Like, he's in a tough quarter. He's got a lot of potential banana skins in his quarter. So there's a lot of reasons not to be very optimistic with Dominic Thiem. Also, this he's had some. He might have one eye on the French as well. He doesn't like that there's no fans. A lot of his quotes have been quite whiny, which has been surprising. Like, he has been playing a lot of tennis and winning a lot of exhibition tournaments and stuff. So he has come in to this US Open in good form, but that loss to Krajinovic was worrying. The only good thing is that he has Munar and then possibly Klan as his first 2 rounds. And unlike, say, for example, imagine if he got someone like Tennis Sandgren, which is what Bautista Agut has. Munar and Klan are very, very beatable opponents. You know, they're not particularly big servers either. They will give him a chance to find some rhythm. He doesn't have to necessarily be at his best. He's always a bit vulnerable in the first round of matches. He likes to play his way into tournaments. So it'll give him a chance to play his way into the tournament. And he could potentially face Marin Cilic in the third round. Now, Cilic was beaten well by Shapovalov at Cincinnati. You could say that he's past his best. Former champion 2014. He was a 14th seed as well, actually, is another fact, in 2014. But he's a very dangerous opponent, and if these courts are fast and he clicks, he's a very, very dangerous opponent for Thiem. So Thiem would want to have found his game by the time he plays Cilic, if it is Cilic. Then it's potentially Andy Murray, maybe in the fourth round. Could be FAA, Felix, or maybe Dan Evans or something like that. I would have to say if Thiem is getting to the fourth round, if he's making it to the fourth round, he would be able to beat any of those guys. FAA still has problems with his forehand and his mental strength. Murray really, Zverev gave him the match. He's looked good since he's come back, but he did take a bit of a beating. Did take a bit of a beating from Raonic, of all people, in Cincinnati, and he was probably a bit tired. And you'd wonder would his body be in good enough shape to take on someone like Thiem if he did play in the fourth round. But he's obviously dangerous, and Murray is available. He is available on the exchange at well over 100 to 1. And stranger things have happened. We know that he has a mentality to go deep in tournaments, and he's looking as fit as he has done in a long time, which is obviously not saying much. But then anyway, in the quarterfinal, you're looking at the likes of Batista Gut, Raonic, and maybe a fellow with an outside chance is Karen Khachanov. Now, Batista Gut's obviously playing in great form. It pushed Novak all the way to a third set tiebreak. Raonic is in great form as well. I was thinking he was looking kind of heavy, but he's actually beat Tsitsipas today. He's made it to Cincinnati final. The courts are playing faster, which will suit his game. So he's obviously very, very dangerous. And I think Thiem would prefer to play Batista Gut, a man where he'll get a lot of looks in. Thiem's probably weakest shot is part of his game is his return, especially on a fast surface. And even though he did beat Raonic, I think in the semi-finals at Indian Wells last year, that was obviously a bit of a slower surface with a higher bouncing ball. A lot of the players we talk about the low bouncing ball, which won't suit Thiem. So it's a kind of a hard one to know. I would say you can't really be backing Thiem at 7-4. There's a lot of banana skins there. The way I would look at it is this: Cilic is available. Again, like Cilic is available at, we'll say, I think about 250 to 1 on the exchange, or maybe not as much, maybe 220 to 1. That's value. I think that's value. I think he ran quite deep in the Australian Open, and I think he kind of ran out of steam. But he bet the likes of Batista Gut and I don't know, someone else who's a pretty solid player, before running out of steam. I can't remember exactly who beat him, but just kind of think that you could put a small bit on him. Batista Gut and Raonic, I think the outright, they're not great value on that outright. Karen Khachanov is a good value on the outright. He's something like 250 to 1. I remember when he won the Paris Masters in at the end of 2018. He went into the 2019 Australian Open at 25 to 1, 250 to 1. I don't think that's too bad value at all. I think he's definitely one of the dark horses. And I remember the great match he had against Kyrgios at the Australian Open. He's had great matches in the US Open in the past as well too. One really great match against Nadal in 2018, which could have went either way. So look, hard to know. I don't think there's any. Batista Gut at 7 to 1 maybe is the value, but then with Raonic playing so well, these guys are going to play each other in the third round. And then potentially have to play Khachanov, and then potentially have to play Dominic Thiem, maybe Silic or Andy Murray, but probably, you know, you're thinking maybe down a team. So you can't really be advising either of those guys too, because they're going to be taking each other out and still have two very hard matches to go after they take each other out. So for me, I'm looking at just happy to have the team at 40-1. I hope you guys followed. Raonic and Raonic and Batista Good. It's just, look, Batista Good is tempting at 7-1, but look, that Raonic, that third set tie between them is going to be tough, and it's in a way, if you're a team supporter, you're kind of happy that one of them is taking each other out. You're hoping Batista Gut wins, even though, like, Batista Gut is a dangerous player. He's just the type of player I think team would prefer to play. Lots of rhythm, long rallies, things like that. Okay. So moving on from that, so we've only picked out one. I picked out a few big outright prices for you guys to look for on the exchange, and then we've picked out one quarter bet, which is just 2 points on Medvedev to win his quarter. So we're going to move on to the women's quarter betting now. What are we on? 26 minutes. I'm going to have to try and rush through, go a little bit faster than this. I did not intend to go that long, but listen, we've just basically went through the whole men's draw there, and the next time we mention the men's tennis, we'll be talking about the match bets, although there's a few other little outrights I want to draw your attention to. So yeah, regarding the women's draw quarter, okay, so we're going to look at the outright betting or the quarter betting as well. Okay, first of all, geez, this is not a good US Open for the women's. From the point of view of quality, like when you're missing the likes of Barty, when you're missing the likes of Andreescu, there's a lot of big names, Svitolina. I'm just trying to think of a few of the others that dropped out. There's a lot of very good players who have dropped. Simona Halep, so and it's also bad for us as tennis bettors, because those I wouldn't have been. I think all those are all players, particularly Halep and Barty, that tend to be overpriced in the market, which usually means that you get better value elsewhere. And the fact that they're not in the market, it's even harder to get good value elsewhere. But anyway, have a look here. So when Karolina Pliskova is your number one seed, you know it's not a very high quality tournament, but her quarter is so poor. It's really, really hard. She's at 5-2 to win her quarter, and let me think now. She's a 5-2 to win her quarter. Brady's the second favourite. She can be 6-1. Then Martic 9-1. Kerber 12-1. Vondrousova is something similar. Risk is a bit bigger, and then you get bigger prices like Garcia and Bellis. But we'll just have a look at Pliskova's run through here. Easy, fairly Caroline in the first round, should be able to beat her. Then Caroline Garcia, who's a tricky second round opponent. We never know which Garcia will turn up. Now, you'd imagine Pliskova would be able to beat her, but it's still not the ideal second round opponent. And then it would be Jennifer Brady or maybe Bellis in the third round, and then we're talking maybe Kerber or Risk in the fourth, and we're talking Vondrousova or Martic in the fifth. Now at 5-2, the thing about Pliskova is she didn't have a good, she lost in straight sets to Kudermetova, the Kudermaster, in Cincinnati, which doesn't bode well. At 5-2 favourite, you could see Brady or Bellis beat her. There's no player here that you can get. There really is no player you can get behind strongly, to be honest. It just is like, even though Pliskova is probably worthy favourite, it's not particularly easy draw. Like Garcia, Brady, worst case scenario, and Kerber finds some form, Vondrousova or Martic. I mean, I guess if someone put money on Pliskova at 5-2, it's not the worst bet in the world. But just that the fact that she lost in straights to Kudermetova just puts me off a little bit. And Brady has been in very good form, although at 6-1, as for her to be the second favourite to win this quarter tells it all. You can't really bet Kerber because you have no idea what her form is. Risk had a very poor loss in Cincinnati to Anisimova. Vondrousova, another person who had a very poor loss to Siegemund. Vondrousova is someone who does seem to need to kind of find form. She can't just switch it on and off. She has to kind of find it. So the person I kind of picked, Brady, the thing about the person I kind of picked really in the outright here, just for half a point, is Petra Martic at 9-1. Now, and it's all based on her draw. Worst case scenario, Martic is pretty solid. She's been, she was reached the fourth round at the US Open last year, lost to Serena. She regularly gets to the third, fourth rounds of Grand Slams, been to the quarterfinal of the French Open in the last few years. It usually takes a good player to beat her, basically. And if you look at her draw, Martinkova, worst case scenario, Bondarenko, who can barely win a match. And Bondarenko, who is like a 1-6 favourite, and she's barely able to win a match at a Grand Slam for years and years. Then Mladenovic, who's hasn't been the same player for about 3-4 years. Then worst case scenario is Putintseva or Vondrousova. Now you wouldn't even expect Vondrousova to get there considering how poor a form she's in. So the next best seed in to meet in the fourth round is Putintseva, and there isn't really a scary opponent. Or someone really to scare you there, Putintseva. And then Pliskova is the worst case scenario in the final thing. And she has a 4-2 record against Pliskova, a winning record against Pliskova, so she won't fear Pliskova. So at 9-1 with Sky Bet, considering her draw, considering she seems to be very likely to get to the quarter-final, considering that draw, I think a half point on Petra Martic. She's played a few, she's mostly played on clay, in the last few months. She's won, she won a few matches there. I can't remember who better. I think it was in Germany she played, and she's obviously been in the US, practicing for the US Open for the last few weeks. I think she'll be ready for it. Pliskova is and by the way, Pliskova is the worst case scenario. And the only thing I'll say about this, the last thing I'll say about this thing is that I wouldn't back Vondrousova for this quarter necessarily, but she is available at, just in case she does find fire, because she is a kind of a sleeping giant in this quarter, and she is a very, very talented player. And just in case she does find something, I'd still back Martic for the quarter, and I back Vondrousova for at 120-1, 125-1 on the exchange. For most betting shops, she's in the 50, 66-1 mark. So if she's getting to the fourth round, she's obviously found some form, so she's dangerous. Another person to look out for there is Kerber. I'd watch her in the first round against Tomljanovic. Tomljanovic is 33-1, which itself is a bit of value. But if Kerber is playing well there, she could be worth looking at outright, considering this is a weak quarter, and she could have she is definitely contended to get to the semi-final, and we know what she's like when she gets to the business end of Grand Slams. With the courts being a bit faster, that would also suit her, but she can't be backed at the moment because we have no idea where her game's at. If you're looking for other possible, like Garcia 33-1 for this quarter, considering how weak a quarter is, big, it seems big. But she's so hard to trust. Even if she bet Pliskova in the second round, you could imagine her once get to a fourth round and choking it. Like she, even if she got to quarterfinal, she'd probably choke it away to someone like Martic. Even though she probably is technically a better, more skillful player, or a more talented. I wouldn't say more skillful player, but more explosively talented. Her potential, she's got better potential, maybe we'll say. Bellis at 25-1 is possibly worth a quarter point. She's come back and I think she reached the. She's had some good wins this year already against Buskova. She's took Mertens to 3 sets at the Aussie Open. Recently took Sabalenka to 3 sets. Doesn't have the easiest draw. Plays Brady second round and Pliskova potentially third round. But if I'd be looking for big prices here, and she had the potential to be a real superstar a few years before she had injury problems. And she's come back looking hungry. She's one to consider at 25-1. Okay, so the third quarter here, and also if you're looking for something crazy, Bet365 have Anne Lee at 200-1, and even that Baptista girl, I haven't seen play yet, but apparently she's got massive potential at 200-1 for this quarter. Now Baptista's results haven't been great. Anne Lee results a little bit better, but I like the look for a game. I just think at 201, if you're just looking for someone crazy to come through, they'd be the ones at a crazy price in a very weak quarter. They would be the ones I'd be looking at. But Martic is the bet, half point, 9-1 Sky Bet. Now next, it was Palermo actually that Martic lost. She lost in a clay final to Kontovic, the red hot Kontovic. So that's no shame in that. So she's obviously maintaining a bit of form. So now next draw, next side of the draw, the next is the quarter 2. And now quarter 2 is the one with Osaka. And Osaka is to me she's a 6-1 favourite to win this tournament. To me, she's the rightful favourite. She's in the final in Cincinnati. She's looked very good there. Beat Mertens quite comfortably today. And she looks very focused. But at 6-1, it's very hard. I think you'd need some kind of double-digit number, like maybe 10-12-1 to be backing her at 6-1. Because we know, even just from the last few slams, she's still capable. She's not necessarily the most reliable. She's still capable of throwing in a few stinkers. She threw in a stinker against Coco Gauff at the Australian Open. She threw in a stinker against Putintseva at Wimbledon. I can't remember who exactly better at the French, but that was a poor loss as well. I think Bencic better in the quarterfinals at the US Open. Should really be beating Bencic. So even though she's looking good, probably better than she has in a long time, she's the class of the field, but 6-1 it seems a bit short. And at 13-5 with Paddy Power to win this quarter, it's actually the most stacked quarter. It's the high in the whole section. Just to go through it here, we have there's people like Kvitova, Kontovic, Buskova, Yastremska, Rybakina. Sevastova, former semi-finalist. So her route would probably be a Misaki Dua, who can be tricky, but you'd expect her fellow Japanese player, you'd expect her to beat Dua. Camilla Giorgi, who also can be very tricky in second round. Sevastova is a potential third round. I'm not sure he should either, or maybe Coco Gauff in the third round. Probably Coco Gauff actually in the third round, who beat her. So that would be a very interesting one. And then maybe Kontovic in the fourth round. I know she beat her this year, but it would have been a very, very tight match this week. And then Kvitova. So it's a tough route for Osaka, and even though she is my favourite, that's a really, really tough draw for her, a tough quarter. Now if she gets through the quarter, and obviously you're not guaranteed that Kvitova is going to be in the quarterfinal, but then if it's not Kvitova, it'll probably be someone like Yastremska or Rybakina. Look, there's no real bets to me. I've seen prices like Georgie at 80-1 to win this quarter. Kontovic is in great form, but I look. She'd have to beat Osaka in the she's about 12-1. She'd have to beat Osaka in the fourth round, and then maybe someone like Kvitova or Yastremska. And I think Kontovic is the type of person that even if she did beat Osaka in the fourth round and was in a quarterfinal, I think she could choke it away to someone maybe that she'd be expected to beat even. So Kvitova as well hasn't, she's about 7-1 to win this quarter. But once again, she does have a potentially easy 2 rounds, but then she'd probably play Pegula or Buskova. Buskova beat her this week, and then maybe Yastremska or Rybakina, 2 very tricky players, big servers, big hitters, and then worst case scenario, Osaka. So you can't really, especially not knowing much about her form coming in here, you can't really be backing Kvitova either. So to me, there's no bet there, but it is, if ever there's a bet, and I haven't checked this market yet, but if I was to pick the winner of this tournament, I would be picking it from quarter 2. Okay, so you heard that here first. I think the winner of the tournament is most likely to come from this quarter. Quarter 3. Serena is at 9-4 to win this quarter, but she hasn't been in great form. She's lost to the likes of Shelby Rogers in recent weeks. She's lost in a final set tiebreak. She's lost to Sakari, it's not that she should have lost to Arantxa Rus. But she lost to Sakari, and it's not that she's just lost to Sakari. There's no shame in losing to Sakari. She lost to Sakari when Sakari didn't even play well. So there's never going, like, if Serena wants to reach Margaret Court's record, there's never going to be a better time than now. I mean, with all these great, like the likes of Halep, Barty, top players missing, Andreescu especially, all these players missing, now is the time. But it just feels like father time is catching up on her. The time is running out. She isn't as quick to react to the ball. She's not getting to to the power shots as fast. She's doesn't even seem to be serving as well. Now she's still playing, top 20 10. I still think she's capable of playing top 20, even maybe top 10 tennis. But I think any player, if someone like Osaka, for example, finds her A game, I don't think this Serena of the current present day can live with an Osaka at her best at the present day. Of course, Serena of 10 years ago would probably take Osaka to the cleaners, but not right now. Not the one that we see today. And age just catches up on us all. But anyway, that doesn't mean that she doesn't have her chance. She has a potential should have an easy enough first 2 rounds. Potential third round match with Sloane Stephens. It depends if Sloane Stephens decides to show up for this tournament, which could be interesting. Then it would be maybe Sakari or Anisimova. I know she beat Anisimova quite easily earlier on in the year, and Sakari beat her, but obviously Serena should have beat Sakari, but then again Sakari should have played better, so that would be a tricky one to know. And then potentially Keys or Muguruza in the quarter final. So look, if you can't be back in, just like if Sloane Stephens has 2 easy first round, should have 2 easy first round matches, and if she gets to a third round of a Grand Slam, she tends to be a different type of opponent. She's usually a mess the whole year round, but sometimes if she gets her teeth into a Grand Slam, we get to see a new Sloane. Sakari's obviously tricky for Serena, and then if it's Madison Keys in the quarterfinal, you'd fancy Serena because she's always had a mental edge over Madison Keys. If it's Muguruza, you wouldn't fancy her. But we don't really know much about Muguruza's form, except that I know that Muguruza, just by her social media, has been quite positive about showing some positive vibes. She's at 13-2 to win this quarter, and you know what? Out of all the prices, I nearly like that one the most to win the quarter, because I think Serena is still overpriced because of her reputation, and Stephens is at 20s, and Vekic is 25-1. Vekic at 25-1 to win the quarter is tempting. She did get to a quarterfinal of the US Open last year. It's not the strongest quarter in my book. When you see the likes of Sakari at 10 and Vekic at 25, definitely it looks like Vekic is better value there. I'm not going to put on a bet on this quarter, but if I was to suggest one, I just have a feeling Muguruza at 13-2 is the best player from 2020 in this draw, in this part of the draw, and at 13-2 with Powers, I think it's Powers, or no, it was 888. That would be the one I go for, and I might consider it. Just keep an eye on the Twitter handle if I do actually go for it and I hear a few more positive vibes. Because sometimes you pay attention to interviews, you want to hear what players have to say, how they're feeling. It might give you a little bit more insight. So I'm going to keep an eye on that. Anyway, and the final quarter basically is the one with Sophia Kenin, the Australian Open champion, the second seed. She had a very poor loss, a very erratic performance against Elise Cornet, where her forehand in particular, particularly short forehands, she wasn't able to put them away at all. So she really will need to fix that. I like Kenin as a feisty competitor. She is available at close to 20-1 on the exchange, and I'd like to see the first round and see if she's playing well. I think she could potentially go deep, but she plays Wickmeyer in the first round. She doesn't have the easiest draw, actually, to be honest. Wickmeyer should be taken care of, but then it's Canadian Fernandez or Zvonareva, who are both in decent form at the moment, and if Kenin is off her game, maybe they'll be able to take her out. And then it's in the third round, Ons Jabeur, who I think she did beat in the Australian Open, but it's always a very tricky third round opponent. Elise Mertens possibly in the fourth round. Elise Mertens is in great form. Now, if it's Elise Mertens' A game against Sophia Kenin's A game, you'd have to fancy Sophia Kenin there, but if Kenin is off her A game, a B game against Mertens' A game, Mertens would win that, I think. Mertens is pretty consistent at bringing her A game. To me, Mertens is like a top of the B list player. I don't consider her as a serious threat to winning Grand Slams unless the draw completely fell apart. But she is pretty consistent, and if you're a top player and you're off your game at all, she's capable of taking you out. And then potentially probably Konta or maybe Sabalenka. I think is it Konta or Sabalenka in the quarterfinals. Now, if Kenin gets to quarterfinals, I'd fancy her against either Konta or Sabalenka, but they're all that's a tough route. So at I think 7-2 she is to win the quarter. I can't be backing it, especially given how poorly she's recently performed in Cincinnati. So we'll just have to wait and see with her. Sabalenka, once again, I think she's totally overrated. I think she's the second favourite here. Konta's went on a decent run too, but hold on a second now. If I just check Konta's price, she did get beaten by Azarenka recently. I'm just trying to think. Azarenka's in this quarter, the quarter as well, but Azarenka's price has gone down. But it'd be interesting to see how Azarenka gets on against Osaka tomorrow. It's great to see her back in a final. I don't personally warm to her I've never warmed to her personality, but in fairness, she's a great fighter. She has been a great fighter over the years, and so in a way, it is nice to see her back playing great tennis. But yeah, she's in this draw as well. So it's just there's so many players that could potentially win this, and there's no big outsider. There's two big outsiders I quite like, and I'm gonna just put it. One of them is Muchkova. She is at 28-1 with Sky Bet now to win the quarter, and I think she's hovering around 40s, 50s to win the whole tournament. There's not too many places have her more, maybe 66, maybe in some places. So at 28 to win the quarter, when Sophia Kenin, who you're not sure what her form is like, is the top seed. Now, she does play Venus in the first round, but Venus is Venus is a shadow of her former self, really. Kenin Sky, second round, you'd expect her to beat her there. But then I think is it Konta? Let me have a look at this now. I have it here. We have probably Konta, which is not the ideal third round. Sabalenka and Kenin. Now, I did the maths here and I made it out to be 30-1. But I think just the fact is that you can't guarantee that the best player that the best players are always going to get through to the next round. Or you're going to. I just to think 28-1 for a half point for Muchkova. I do think she's a quality player. I think she's on the up. I think she can only get better and better. A good young player from Czech Republic. At 28-1, I think she represents a good outside bet. And I had to go for Swiatek at 33-1 with Paddy Powers, even though she looked very poor in her loss. I think it was I can't remember who was it that beat her. Was it Christina McHale? No, I can't remember what. I don't think it was Mikhail, but she had a poor loss anyway in Cincinnati. But at 33-1 with her talent, I also think she's a bit overrated. But just I think that was a mistake by Paddy Power having her at 33-1. She should really be about 18-20-1. There. So to win the quarter, Swiatek at 33-1, a half point in each. Muchkova 28, Swiatek 33. I'm going to leave the women's draw at that, but I'm just going to say just a few things just regarding the outrights there. There's a lot of very, very big prices in the men's, such as Sandgren is, even though he's 1,000-1. He's been to the quarterfinal of 2 of the last 3 slams, and he's at 1,000-1. And I don't think he's even on Novak's side of the draw. So, like that is on the exchange. I've seen prices like Seaboat Wild, who became the first teenager of this is it this millennium to win an ATP tour, albeit on clay in Santiago, beating Casper Ruud in the final. I think he's certainly got potential. At 2,000-1, there's the Japanese fella at Nakashima, who is at 2,000-1. Like, these are all worth little, I don't know what you put €1 each way in each of them. These are fun little bets to consider. Hugo Humbert is 1,000-1. Humbert is 1,000-1, the French guy. That's a very decent price, and one we're considering on this exchange. Another person, 1,000-1, Fuchsovic. Now, he doesn't have a chance really, but like 1,000-1 is so big. It's just, just in case something weird happens to draw and it opens up. Like these are, and also it's just so coverable, like as well. Say you have some of the other bigger players backed, and just the fact that you've put a tiny little bit of money on some of these other players at massive prices, they might end up playing each other in fourth rounds, quarterfinals, and you don't have to worry. You're a winner either way. So these are some big prices that I was looking at there. So yeah. So yeah, they're definitely ones I'd consider. Okay, so just let's go quickly to the match betting, because we're not going to spend too much long on the match betting. I don't have that much. I'm going to try and get this done in about an hour and, let me see, an hour and 5 minutes hopefully. My first match bet tip is going to be on Bedene to beat Ruusuvuori. Ruusuvuori, 21-year-old Finn. This is a bit of a trend that kind of happens, some kind of young gun kind of shows a little bit of form and gets him 1 or 2 nice results, and there always tends to be an overreaction to the young gun. And Ruusuvuori, really, he got to a final in Canberra earlier on in the year in a challenger event, and he lost to Kohlschreiber in that final. And but I think he bet Sinner, and when he bet Sinner in straights, he sort of gained a bit of attention for that. But like, since then, who has he beaten really of note? Denis Novak, a good player that he's beaten, but he's had losses to Benchetrit, Gambas, Barrere, Pospisil, Gerasimov, and really should have been beaten by Korda the other day in Cincinnati. Now, he did take a set off Berrettini. Berrettini was far from his best too. He's a good player, he is a good player. Like he's quite stylish and quite enjoyable to watch, but it's just the fact that Bedene was 10-11 here, and I think he's about 5-6 now. The fact that it is seen as pick'em is, I think, very disrespectful to a very good, solid veteran pro like Bedene. He's had a good run himself at the moment. He had a good win over Novak, Christian Garin and Taylor Fritz, of course, which was a very good win before losing to Novak at Cincinnati. I think he got hit to the 3rd round of US Open last year. And he beat Benoit Paire, who was in decent form at the time. Went 4 sets with Zverev. He's beaten the likes of he just has a lot of 5-set experience. This guy Ruusuvuori, he's totally unproven over 5 sets. And doesn't have the results to warrant being at a pick and price against Aljaz Bedene, in my opinion. So I had to go 2.2 points on Bedene at 10-11 there. I also think Bedene just has the serving edge there. Ruusuvuori, even for a tall guy, his serve isn't massive. Bedene does have a pretty big serve. He's pretty one-dimensional player. Like I do like his backhand down the line, but I just think he's pretty solid. And even though I wouldn't be surprised at all if this goes to 4 or 5 sets, I think Denny has the 5-set experience and the overall game to take Ruusuvuori down here. We also tipped up on the Twitter handle Mugpause. We tipped up Diego Schwartzman Diego Schwartzman against Cameron Norrie he was at 4-6. He went off at Betfair and Paddy Power originally, and he's down to about 4-11 now, which you wouldn't be backing that. I think that's a bit of an overreaction, if anything. But look, that was a good one. We put 3 points on it. Hopefully you follow this straight away before the price plummeted. Like Diego, he got to the quarters here in last year. He likes the US Open, got to the quarters here last year, beat the likes of Sandgren and Zverev last year. He's just become quite a solid Grand Slam performer. Even in Wimbledon last year, he got to the third round and went 5 sets with Berrettini, who had just won his first grass court tournament, and so he's just I think a class above Norrie. I think Norrie's only ever won 1 match in a Grand Slam. I could be wrong on that. I could be wrong, but I think the only one he's ever won was against Dennis Istomin when Dennis Istomin was totally out of form at Wimbledon. But like he's had losses to the likes of Barrere and Herbert in 5 sets. Even though the head-to-head between himself and Diego is 1 each, you gotta give Diego has the class to take him out there, really. So we're very happy to have that 4-6. Also, if you're looking for a very good parlay, I think a one that is pretty much guaranteed in my mind, I would say Mertens, Yastremska and Sakari. We put them at 4-6. I'm putting 4.5 points on that, and that's my biggest bet of the tournament. I just think Mertens has a very good record against Siegemund. She's so solid. She's in great form. Get to the semi-final and will get a bit of rest after losing today against Osaka in relatively competitive match. I'd happily back Mertens in the handicap as well. I think she'll beat Siegemund comfortably, even though Siegemund did beat Vondrousova, which was a result that kind of flattered to deceive. She got hammered in the next match. I can't remember who hammered her off the top of my head, but Yastremska is just going to be way too good for Astra Sharma. She's going to destroy Sharma's back. Sharma's backhand is pretty poor. Hits a pretty nice forehand, but Sharma is just not going to be. Especially on a fast surface, it's just a class. This is just a massive gulf in class, and Sakari, very solid, very reliable in the first round of Grand Slams. Vogel just way too inconsistent, not really on Sakari's level. So I just think and also they're both 3 players, very highly motivated players. Yastremska can be a bit hit and miss at times, but she played reasonably well last week in Cincinnati, had a good win over Venus, and is generally quite motivated in the Grand Slams. So I can't see any of them losing. So any other bets that I had there? Let me see. I have a few here. I am going to get to the questions there at the end. Don't worry, guys. Let me see. I was just little ideas that we were having there. We backed Sloane Stephens actually at 1.25 points just to beat, because she went off at nearly Pickham against Buzarnescu, so we just backed it straight away, even though nobody likes to back Sloane in the first round of any tournament, because we never know what Sloane is going to turn up. But she lost in 2 tight sets against Garcia, who went on to lose in tight sets against Azarenka. At least it wasn't one of those 6-3, 6-love things where Sloane, at least, it probably doesn't look so bad now that Azarenka's got to the final. So Garcia's form actually looks a bit better. The fact that she went close with Azarenka and so on. But it's more the fact that Buzarnescu has not played in a year. And really, Sloane Stephens has no business playing tennis or competing for slams anymore if she can't beat as a tennis player who hasn't played for a year. And I think I've seen some positive vibes from Sloane on her Twitter handle and stuff like that. So we're happy to have her. I didn't go bigger because you just can't trust Sloane in the early stages of Grand Slam. In the later stages, possibly, but in the early stages, you can't trust her, so you can't be putting too much on her. But that one had to be backed at that price. Also, who else did we go for? We did go for McNally against Kuzmova. I just think McNally, Kuzmova has sort of stalled in her career and really does find it hard to past the finishing line in tough big matches. Has a tendency to choke. Neither of their form has been great recently, but I just think McNally has showed enough in recent years to warrant that bet. Now I will say it's one that I've looked out of all my bets that I've looked back on. It's one where I'm kind of looking back and kind of going, maybe I'm not so sure about that. Maybe I should have left it. We backed. Who else have we got? I'm just going to have a look at the draw here very, very quickly. We decided to go for Alison Risk at minus 5.5 games against Tatiana Maria at the price was at 4-5, because Tatiana Maria, I think, is 5 months pregnant. So I'm sure surely is only here to take a paycheck. I think she knows that it mightn't be good press for someone to to be complaining that she's playing when she's pregnant, whatever, because then there might be a charge of sexism and stuff like that in this day and age. So, fair enough to her. Like, fair play. Like, she's entitled. She has the rank, so she's entitled to play if she wants to play. Risk has a winning record against her anyway. She's beat her twice, and just the fact that surely Maria is going to struggle to get round the court, and that Risk should have to be able to beat her quite comfortably. Now, once again, I'm basing it on that bit of information, so that's why I only went 1.25. Risk had a bad loss to Anisimova 6-3, 6-3 recently, so she doesn't obviously look in brilliant form either, but I just based it on the pregnancy thing. Maybe not many people know about the pregnancy thing, so that's why I wanted to bring that to your attention. Okay, so I'll race through some of these. Who's likely to shock? I think Dan Evans. I'd be interested to see how this young lad gets on against Dan Evans. I like Barrere at minus 4.5 points against Daniel. I haven't confirmed at about 10-11 against Taro Daniel. I think Barrere should win that one quite comfortably. Unfortunately, missed the initial 4-6 that went out on him. Let me see who else is there. Someone like Gojicic, who's in one of the easier sides of the draw. He's 500-1 on 500-1 outright, I think, and he's also in I think Medvedev side of the draw. So especially considering with Medvedev, he's worth maybe a few quid as well. I don't think he's got the mentality to be a champion, but he is talented, and at 500-1, that's a very big price. Steve Johnson has won the last 4 matches against John Isner, which is something to consider. Just in case you're thinking of putting Isner into some kind of a parlay piece, I'd be very, very cautious of Steve Johnson there. I think Harris might be worth putting in a parlay piece, so keep an eye on the Twitter for that. Who else have we got? Andrei Kuznetsov, welcome back. The Russian guy, he's about 6-1. And he was a real player. He's struggled with injuries, but he's back playing. He's a real player. He's about 6-1 against Sam Querrey. Recently played, I think he lost in 2 very tight sets on clay to Griekspoor, who went on to win the tournament that he played. So that's a sign that maybe his game isn't in bad nick. Querrey had a bad loss last week and is a bit hit and miss at the best of times. So I'm tempted that I think he might even be available at 7-1 someplace. So I'm tempted by Kuznetsov, even though there's very little form to go off. He does have that pedigree, at least, to beat Querrey, and when the price is that big, it might be worth looking at. Lajovic, I backed Lajovic at 5-6. I really fancy him. I think he's always underrated in these Grand Slam matches, especially off clay. And Gerasimov had a bad lost recently. I think, who was it? Bet Gerasimov. I can't remember, but he got back. So I'm happy to have backed him now. He's at 8-13 now. It's hard to really tip him now, really, when I got him at 5-6. I didn't post it straight away because the price changed very, very quickly anyway. So let me see. Londero. I fancy Londero against Donskoy. McDonald Casper Rudd is interesting, but I'm staying away from that. Mutet Veseli is interesting. I'm not sure what to do, but Nagel seems a bit of a big price. The Indian fella, he took a set off Roger Federer last year, if my memory serves me correct. He's at 5-2 to beat Bradley Clan, and like Bradley has best tennis seems to be behind him. He has hardly set the world alight in recent years. Nagel is coming over from playing a bit of clay. I think I remember him taking a set off stand there last week on clay. So that's one I'm definitely considering, but I haven't had a chance to look at all these matches. If I can get any information, some kind of quote that Guy Pella is saying that he's feeling fit, he's feeling motivated, he's feeling his game is in good shape, I would definitely back him as an underdog price of 11-8 against Wolf. Wolf, I think, is very overrated. I think it's like what happens with a lot of these young American players. They tend to be overrated. His backhand is pretty poor. I think Pella is a guy to Pella, the one, you know, if he's in form, if he's in good shape, I think he is a step above Wolf, so I'd expect him to win that. So, but we'd have to wait and see what information we have about him, because there's no account of him playing any tennis whatsoever. Safwat looks like a big price. I think Gilles Simon is on the way out. I think the best of Gilles, like he really has. This is often what happens to big player or to grinders. You know, you can even see it the likes of that David Ferrer. The grinders tend to struggle more in their 30s than, you know, the more naturally aggressive players, you know, and he just isn't the player he was. He can still play decent tennis on grass, of course, but he got the Queen's final last year actually. But off the grass, he's been pretty poor. Safwat, I've no real faith in him, but he can play tennis. I just think Simon, like I saw prices like 6 or 7 to 1. I was like, oh my god, that seems to be way too big. So that's one to consider. Simon had a very bad loss, and lost the last 9 games against Korda. So it might be worth backing even Safwat. Something happened with his serve or whatever. It might be worth backing Safwat. I wouldn't even go handicap. I'd just back him with a bookie that pay out on maybe retirements or something. Back him outright at 6-1, something small. Shapovalov. We've seen the Sinner Kachanov, great first round match. Anderson Zverev, great first round match. Tiafoe Seppi is an interesting first round match. And yeah, so there's not really much more there. Murray and Nishioka, that's a tough first round match for Murray. Very tough first round match. Now, one thing I'm kind of worried about, I might be posting this up as a tip actually, is that I do not know what Arconada has done to Mert being so close to Juvan. I know it's probably pronounced Juvan, but Juvan from Slovenia or Slovakia, I'm not sure. I think it's Slovenia. Juvan. Arconada, like, she lost recently to Christine McHale. I just don't know what she's done. Juvan has a better pedigree. I know Juvan is no world beater, but she has proved herself. Like, Arconada has no real results to suggest that this should be so close. Like, at least Juvan has some results. She's taken a set off Serena at Wimbledon, for example. You know, she's been able to come through qualifying a few times for Grand Slams. She's won matches at Grand Slams. So I see Juvan at 3-4. I'm like, yeah, that's very tempting. So I'll keep an eye on the Twitter. I might be pulling the trigger on that. Bondarenko is like something like 2-11 to beat Kick. Now, Ali Kick is she's sort of a challenger level, I don't know, maybe journeywoman, I suppose, but Bondarenko playing a Grand Slam match at 2-11. I'm so tempted to back Kick there, even though I don't rate her much as a tennis player. But it could be one of those ones where if it gets tight, Bondarenko is renowned for the old choke. Or for example, if Kick won a second set 7-6 or something, and for example, if Bondarenko won the first set, you might be able to get Kick at some ridiculous price 12, 14, 16 to 1 or something, and she, I think Rodionova pulled won a tiebreak on Bondarenko in the second set of the Australian Open, and then just won the last set 6-1 or 6-love or something like that. And so just beware of these things online. Buzkova Pegula, I have no idea who's going to win that one. Probably will go the overs. I quite fancy Kirstia to beat Christina McHale. Christina McHale had a few good results at Cincinnati last week. But the Alexandrova win looks better than what it is. Alexandrova played very, very poorly. A bit like Kennan, she couldn't pounce on the short balls at all. She kept on overhitting her forehand, and McHale was just keeping the ball in the court. Herself and Kirstia, it's been a pretty even rivalry. I just think that in a Grand Slam match, Kirstia is just a little bit more match tough. I think Kirstia has, it could be a tight match, and I'd fancy Kirstia to come through in a tight match at an underdog price. I saw her at a price at 6-4. I just think this should be 5-6, 5-6. Or if anything, I'd be having Kirstia as a slight favourite. I think it might be a bit of an overreaction to McHale's recent results. So at 6-4 on Kirstia, that to me that is worth a point for sure. It's worth a point for sure. Let me see. There is anyone. Lauren Davis has been very, very poor form, so I'm tempted to go on to back the unders for Cornet to beat her quite comfortably, but I haven't decided yet. Fully decided. Coco Gauff Sevastova, great first round match, interesting one. Georgie Van Uytvanck. Georgie's a good record against Van Uytvanck, but her price is gone. She's about 1-2 now. The unders might be a good one there because, Georgie sometimes can have control the odd stinker. So if you're thinking of backing Georgie, I think she will probably win comfortably enough. But if you're back under 21 games, or under 21.5 games, if you can get a price like 5-6 on that, that would mean that somebody would have to win, maybe 7-6, that's what, 13, 7-6, 6-2, 7-5, 6-3, in straight sets. It could easily be Georgie just hammers Van Uytvanck. Van Uytvanck hasn't been in great form. If Georgie brings her best game, she probably wins it comfortably enough. If she doesn't turn up, she's capable of losing to anyone. So I don't know. The unders kind of looks appealing to me there. I already backed Golubic at 4-6 against Lapko, but that price is gone. I'm not sure about Gracheva and Badosa. I know I have some friends who really fancy, rate Badosa. I don't particularly rate her, but I just don't know. I haven't seen enough of Gracheva to really know where her game's at. I do fancy Kalinska. No. I'm very surprised. Kasatkina is in my blacklist. Has been in my blacklist for a while, but I'm still surprised to see her as an underdog against Kostyuk. I think this Kostyuk girl, she broke onto the scene in the Australian Open a few years ago, and everyone thought she was going to be a big deal, and she has done very, very little since. I'm quite tempted by Lee against Roos, but I think I'm probably going to leave it unless there's more money that comes in for Roos and the price looks more appealing. Peterson Flipkins, Pirankova, she's back in the draw and she's 7-1, and that's another one where you're tempted. Jesus, if Pirankova has in any way kept herself in shape and found her game, she'd have, all things being equal, she's a better player than Samsonova. We just don't know where she hasn't been playing for a few years, so we have no idea where she's at. But if she's anywhere near a game, you'd think she'd have every chance against Samsonova. So I don't know. I might just put a few quid just in case on her. Let me see. Yeah, I think that's one. I'm tempted by Kanepi against Siniakova. it's like Kanepi still plays pretty good tennis. She's 35 now at this stage, but like I said, because she has that easy power, that easy power is something that is the last thing to go. You know, it's the legs kind of goes first. Teichmann is 250-1. That might be worth a quarter point each way for you guys. She's 251 with Boyle Sports. I'm kind of eyeing her up as hopefully a big price at the French Open, because she's a clay courter really, and she's kind of, we're always looking for some player to come under the radar. She could be the one to do it. Have a feeling Scott against. Have a feeling Vickery and Townsend will go the unders. It's either Townsend brings her best game and beats Vickery comfortably, or Townsend plays like she did against Sharma and she's just way out of shape and basically beats herself. So that could be one for the unders as well. So I don't know. Anyway, so there are some ideas about the matches. I had a look at the draws there. I don't think I missed too many matches, I hope. Yeah, I didn't, I don't think. Okay, so I'm going to just deal with the last few questions that were sent to me from some followers of the podcast. Won't go as far to say fans, especially when their podcasts are rambling on for as long as this. So here are the questions that I received. I just have to find them here. Okay, so one of the questions is from Praneet. Now Praneet says, first of all, what do I think of Nakashima and Sinner's chances? First of all, I think Nakashima is a real talent, and as I said, 2001, I couldn't resist the 2001 that Boy Sports offered him, but it's a bit early to say yet. In fact, he's playing Paolo Lorenzi, and he's a big favourite against Paolo Lorenzi. And just from the point of view of value in betting, I'm like 38. Lorenzi must be the oldest man in the draw, but he's still playing lots of tennis and winning lots of tennis matches. And I remember he bet Kecmanovic at the US Open last year over 5 sets. He's a real grinder. I wouldn't be surprised if Nakashima loses that match. You know, he's a lot to learn still, but he's definitely a player with a lot of potential. And I'm very excited to see how he gets on. Sinner, love his backhand, absolutely love his backhand. But I think Kachanov beats him, to be honest. I think Sinner still has a bit of growing up to do. Physically, I don't think he is really. I haven't seen that he's ready to stick it out for like over the course of 5 sets. You know, we've no evidence of that he's able to play back-to-back matches, best of 5 sets at high level, you know. And so if you're talking about what are his chances of going deep, he's also had some bad losses of late. Who was it that beat him there recently? Someone beat him recently that you wouldn't expect to beat him. Oh no, it was Caruso, you know, the Italian guy. You know, if Caruso's beating you, I like Caruso, I think he's a good player, but if he's beating you, you shouldn't be considering yourself any sort of contender for a Grand Slam. Shapovalov, you also say Shapovalov has always done decent in the Open. Best of 5 suits him better. How do you see him going? Well, I kind of once again, I did just kind of say the 170-1 on him is worth a punt. I do have a little bit of money on him, not much. Best of 5. The thing about it is he the US Open was kind of his breakthrough moment, wasn't it really? But since the US Open, the last 2 years, he's still he got to the 3rd round. He lost to Monfils in 5 sets, and he lost to Anderson in 5 sets. And conditions are a bit fast here as well. And he had a disappointing loss in the Australian Open as well to Fucsovics, you know. So he sort of keeps on letting us down, doesn't he? A bit like, you know, he kind of flatters to deceive, and then for whatever reason, in some ways I think the 5 set doesn't suit him at all. I just think that maybe he's lacking a bit of mental stamina. You know, that's why he keeps losing these, you know, in 5 sets, you know, in these 5 sets matches. I'm not sure, but very talented, obviously, very excited. I love watching him play. Very exciting to watch, and I'd love to see him go deep. And I especially because we need some sort of we'd like to see someone challenge Novak in that quarter, and there really aren't that many candidates, but that sort of just hit you in the face. But I don't see any reason to think that Shapovalov is a contender to win this right now. But I hope I'm wrong, because I'll win money if I'm wrong. And who does Novak fear more, Tsitsipas or Zverev? This is question 3. Okay, this is my good instinct straight away when I heard this question was Tsitsipas, because in my head Tsitsipas is a better player than Zverev, and I have doubts about Tsitsipas's backhand, although I think it's a bit more effective on faster surfaces, but he just overall seems to have maybe a better temperament and a better he doesn't have the serving issues, the double fault issues that Zverev have. I think he's a better athlete, a better mover than Zverev. But having said all that, I don't think, the thing is, I think they both have records. Novak is winning the head-to-head 3-2 to each, but Zverev is the one that has beaten Novak in big finals. So in Rome, and particularly the ATP Tour finals. So. For that reason, it's a hard one to call. I really don't know. I really don't know. I think it could well be Zverev, maybe because Zverev has been better against Novak in the bigger matches. So what can you say? Even though it seems to me that Tsitsipas is a better player, Zverev seems to have been better against Novak in the bigger matches. And if they do play each other in the semi-final, that means Zverev is playing well. He's found his form, and so. Yeah, maybe it is Zverev and not Tsitsipas. I don't know. What do you think? I'd like to hear your views. And the next question, I think, is from Ben Stiller? Let me make sure this one. Who amongst the next Gem will win the most slams? Who amongst the next Gem will win the most slams? Why? Is it, and you'd say Team Medvedev, Tsitsipas. Suppose you can add the likes of Shapovalov, Zverev. Wow, I really don't know. I don't think there is actually any of them are a massively outstanding candidate, and there's a part of me that isn't I can see some of these guys not win slams. I can see Zverev not winning a slam. Even though I just said that obviously, I think Tsitsipas is more likely to win the slam than Zverev. I just think Zverev is emotionally kind of all over the place, and Tsitsipas seems like a much better mover than Zverev. Where I think there's a ceiling to how Zverev's movement can improve. Obviously, he can improve the serve though, and that could be a weapon. And you've got to say, team surely has the game to start winning some slams now. But he's in the peak, and winning, if he doesn't start winning them within the next year or two, his opportunity might have passed by him. Medvedev mentally looks pretty strong, but once again, I don't see him as being a possible dominant player. And there is a lot of talk about the Felix and Sinner. These guys obviously are very talented, but it's, to me, I have to say, I'd love to give you an answer and say I think it's going to be this person, but it would only be a gut instinct. I have to say I don't have a really strong feeling that one of these guys is going to just completely break through and be the next dominant person. But if you ask me, look. It's probably cheating because he's technically not next gen, but I'd have to say team. I think from next year on, I think this possibly could be Rafa's last last French Open win. I think time will catch up on Rafa, and I think Thiem has a few French Opens in him at least. Once he breaks that duck, maybe a US Open, an Australian Open. Hard to know. Maybe Medvedev will be the next choice. Anyway, and I've got to go we asked for some predictions as well. Sidant has a prediction. He's obviously keen on Murray. He says Murray is making round 4. One of the top 5 seeds is losing early. He didn't specify which one. Could be, maybe he's thinking Thiem, considering Thiem might have the trickiest draw. And there's also a retort to that comment by James. If Murray can make round 4, he can make the quarterfinal, because that section of the draw is vulnerable to collapsing. And I think Sidant reckons Thiem has the beating of Murray in the 4th round, and I think basically James thinks that Thiem is vulnerable, so he mightn't even be in the 4th round. So yeah, I think that definitely I think Murray's got a great chance of making round 4, and if he doesn't play Thiem, he's got a great chance of making the quarterfinal. But I think if it is Thiem, you'd fancy Thiem there, because Thiem will have the what you call the rhythm necessary. You know, he'll have played himself into the sort of form he needs to play himself into. I hope I didn't miss any questions, guys. Thanks very much. If you like the podcast, I know it's very long. Obviously, you need to be a big, massive tennis fan to be listening to this the whole way through. If you have any more questions, tweet at me. Please retweet the podcast on your and share it on your Facebook walls, your Twitter accounts, retweet it, your WhatsApp groups, all that kind of thing. Subscribe to us on YouTube, a Mugs Game Podcast. Leave a comment if you'd like. If you know, ask a question on the YouTube comment, and just spread the word. And hopefully we'll have some winners. And final question: who's going to win the US Open outside of the tennis betting? You know, if I will keep my betting hat off, have to say it's going to be Novak and Osaka. So boring, but how can you pick against Novak, first of all, if there's no money involved? And to me, Osaka is the best player in the draw, and she's in good form, and as long as she keeps her head, she's the player to beat. Okay, so hopefully we'll have a Premier League podcast, which will be a lot shorter next time. And very best of luck to everyone in their bets, and hopefully we'll enjoy some good tennis and see some pretty dramatic and interesting storylines develop as the 2 weeks go by. Good night and good luck.